Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunrise Medical Education in Motion. I'm very excited today to introduce you to Paula Rushton. I've known Paula for several years, and we've worked on some projects together. This spring, I was able to hear her present on some wheelchair skills resources that she's been working on. Paula is an occupational therapist. She's director of the occupational therapy program at Dalhousie University. And she is going to present, now you've got it, how are you going to use it, innovative approaches to wheelchair skills training, the evolution of pediatric specific resources. And I'm going to shut off my view so that you'll be able to see Paula's slideshow.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. I'm going to start sharing my screen now, and then so that you can have the full PowerPoint in front of you, I'll turn my camera off so you'll just see the PowerPoint. And so now you should just see the PowerPoint, and if someone, Jess, if you can confirm that you can hear me okay still?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and you're just seeing the PowerPoint?
Just the PowerPoint, looks great.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so we'll get right into it then. So I'm really going to focus today on how we've been using the Knowledge to Action framework to implement the Wheelchair Skills Program in Pediatric Rehabilitation. So just to set the stage, I'd like to acknowledge that today I'm really presenting a body of work that has happened, really happened over the last 9-10 years, with involvement from a lot of different researchers, from a lot of different students, from different universities, including Dalhousie University, University of Montreal, and the University Laval. But the work really stems from the Wheelchair Skills Program, which is out of Dalhousie University. Several bodies have funded the work, and you can see the logos of these bodies or organizations at the bottom of the screen here. So CHU Saint Justine Research Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the Ordre des Ergothérapeutes du Québec, which is the College for Occupational Therapists in the province of Quebec, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, the Fonds de Recherche du Québec Santé, which is the provincial organization for funding health research in the province of Quebec, and the CIHR Child Bright Network. I have no conflicts of interest to declare. The target audience for this webinar is, of course, clinicians and researchers who work in the area of wheeled mobility. All of the resources that I'll be describing for you today can be found on the Wheelchair Skills Program website. The link is there. And as I mentioned, I'll be presenting a body of work, so it's a very high level overview as opposed to specific details about projects. So if anyone wants to reach out to me afterwards with more specific details about any of the projects that I'll be describing, I'm more than happy to engage in conversation after the fact, or of course in the question period at the end. But if questions remain, my email address is there. And so the learning objectives for this webinar, I hope that by the end of the webinar, you'll be able to understand the evolution of the Wheelchair Skills Program and its application in pediatric rehabilitation. List 3 important ingredients to include in a pediatric wheelchair skills training intervention to facilitate motor learning and active engagement. And to describe 2 innovative approaches and/or resources for delivering pediatric wheelchair skills training. So I'll contextualize the work that I'll be presenting within the World Health Organization's wheelchair service steps. As I'm sure probably all of you on the call today are aware, in 2023, WHO released new guidelines for wheelchair service provision, and there are now 4 steps as opposed to 8. Select, fit, train, and follow up. And the work that I'll be describing today really falls within the 3rd step, which is train. A number of different health care providers are engage in the process of wheelchair service provision. For many of us, such as occupational therapists, it falls solidly within our scope of practice. However, we do know that from surveys that have been conducted, both locally here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, as well as globally, that oftentimes wheelchair skills training is one component of the wheelchair service provision process that's missed. And so I just wanted to share the WFOT, the World Federation of Occupational Therapists, position statement around occupational therapy and wheeled mobility and seating devices. So within this position statement, they state that occupational therapists provide wheeled mobility and seating device services in many environments, and they assume roles that include but are not limited to several things, including training users and caregivers on safe and efficient use. And so I guess I bring that to our attention within the context of the presentation today, just to remind everyone that this is an important part of practice, and that if it's not being done in the context in which you work, there are position statements, there's evidence to support implementation of wheelchair skills training, and it's very important. So fortunately, we have a program, an evidence-based program that can guide wheelchair skills testing and training. It's called the Wheelchair Skills Program. This program initiated in 1996, so it's been evolving over a long period of time. It originated out of Dalhousie University, and there's a physiatrist by the name of Lee Kirby, who is the lead developer of this program, and I've been fortunate to work with Lee since 1999. So the Wheelchair Skills Program really provides a set of protocols for assessing and training wheelchair skills. Today, we're really going to be focusing on the training component, but in terms of assessing, there's the Wheelchair Skills Test, which is an objective performance-based measure, and the questionnaire version, which is subjective self-report. And then there's the Wheelchair Skills Training Program component, which is heavily based on motor learning principles and very skill-specific techniques for training a range of different wheelchair skills. Today, we're focusing on manual wheelchair skills. And within this program, there are 30 skills ranging from more basic indoor skills such as rolling forwards and backwards, going around turns, to more advanced and community-based wheelchair skills such as using a wheelie to go down steep ramps or off curbs, for example. What you're seeing on this slide is the homepage of the Wheelchair Skills Program, or WSP website. All of the resources are freely available, including those that I'll be describing for you today. For example, there is the Wheelchair Skills Program manual and all of the forms for the different assessments. There's a description of the equipment that you may wish to use if you're looking to test and train skills in a standardized way. When courses are available, they're listed here, et cetera, et cetera. So everything on the Wheelchair Skills Program website is freely available. One resource that, if you're not yet familiar with this program, that you may wish to spend a little bit of time with, is the Wheelchair Skills Program Manual. It's a very comprehensive manual on testing and training wheelchair skills. It's 332 pages in its current version. It takes us through information around introducing the program itself, an introduction to safety issues, a general introduction to the assessment of wheelchair skills, and then a specific chapter for the wheelchair skills test, another specific chapter for the questionnaire version, a chapter dedicated to wheelchair skills training, so really looking at the trainer's tools and how to incorporate motor learning principles into wheelchair skills training. And then chapter 7 is around each of the individual skills included in the program, testing and training. Then there's the chapter on activities and participation, and a full chapter on games. If you were to dive right in and want to learn about wheelchair skills testing and training right away, and you had limited time, you might jump into chapter 7. So I'll just outline or kind of orient you to this chapter. Right now we're looking at one skill, the skill of rolling forward. So for each of the skills in the Wheelchair Skills Program, they describe the kind of a general perspective of the skill. So for which type of wheelchair is the skill pertinent? how to test the wheelchair skill, how to test the wheelchair skill. So for example, are there any prerequisites? What is the equipment? What are the instructions for the skill? How do we score the skill? Wheelchair skills training, so adjustment tips for the wheelchair, general training tips, and then there are usually special considerations for different types of wheelchair users or different diagnoses. There's a video playlist that links to our YouTube channel, and then a learning quiz for each skill. So that provides you with a bit of an orientation to the type of information that you can find in Chapter 7 for each of the individual skills found within the Wheelchair Skills Program. There are also resources available. So you can see here on the screen an instructional poster for breaking down the 3 different steps of overcoming a 15-centimeter pothole using the momentum method. And as I just mentioned, we also have our YouTube channel. I just did this screenshot this morning. So as of today, we have 835 videos posted on our YouTube channel. So it's a wealth of information if you're looking to test or train a wheelchair skill and you're unsure how. There's a lot of resources here on the YouTube channel. So that's background, very brief background for the Wheelchair Skills Program. What I really wanted to share with you today is how we've been working over about the last 10 years to implement the Wheelchair Skills Program in pediatric rehabilitation. We've been using the Knowledge to Action framework, which is what you can see here on this slide. So this framework offers a 7-step process for implementing an intervention into practice. So starting with step 1, looking to see if there's a gap between the evidence that exists about an intervention and what's currently happening in practice. Step 2, adapting knowledge to local context. In this case, we're talking about pediatric rehabilitation. Step 3, assessing barriers and facilitators to using the knowledge use or the intervention, the Wheelchair Skills Program. Selecting, tailoring, and implementing the intervention. And then, of course, monitoring knowledge use, evaluating our outcomes, and sustaining knowledge use. Within the center of those steps is the knowledge creation funnel. And so here we have 3 what they call generations of knowledge. Knowledge inquiry, so really looking at collecting data on the evidence of an intervention. Knowledge synthesis, so gathering together all the information that's out there on an intervention. And then developing knowledge tools, products, and resources. So at that last level of knowledge creation, it's really tailoring that knowledge for a specific population of users. So in this case, pediatric manual wheelchair users and clinicians. So I'm going to take you through what we've done in the last number of years using this framework to implement the Wheelchair Skills Program in a pediatric rehab center and its affiliated schools in the province of Montreal, the city of Montreal in the province of Quebec in Canada. So about 10 years ago, we started this process, and the very first thing we wanted to understand is if what was happening in practice and if there was in fact a gap between evidence and practice. And so we conducted a couple of surveys. We first wanted to understand if occupational therapists working with children who use manual wheelchairs were offering basic community and advanced wheelchair skills training to their clients. Within this pediatric rehab center and the affiliated schools, there were 36 occupational therapists, all participated in this survey. So what we can see here on the graph, on the left-hand side of this first graph is information pertaining to the wheelchair user. On the right-hand side of this graph is the caregiver. So we'll start with the wheelchair user. What we can see is that clinicians, occupational therapists in this case, 17 of 36 were always providing basic mobility skills training to their clients, and 2 were always providing community skills training. 14 were sometimes providing basic skills training, 26 were sometimes providing community skills, and 13 sometimes providing advanced. And when we get to the never category, 3 were never providing basic mobility skills, 8 never providing community, and 23 never providing advanced wheelchair skills training. So then the question is, okay, they're not consistently training the kids? Are they training the caregivers? Are they training the parents? So if we flip over to this side of the graph, we can see that 5 were always training basic skills, 3 were always training community, 23 were sometimes training basic, 18 were sometimes training community, and 7 sometimes training advanced. And then if we look at those that were never training the caregiver, 8 were never training basic, 15 never training community, 29 never training advanced. So the dyad of the child and their parent were not consistently receiving wheelchair skills training, which, given the evidence-based program that exists out there, we felt we could do better there. The feedback that we did receive from the clinicians, though, was that, well, the parents and the child, they're going to sort it out. The child always has someone around them. They're going to figure it out on their own. So we said to ourselves, okay, well, let's survey a few children and their parents. We had a sample size of 18 here, and just see if they are experiencing difficulty with performing any of the skills. In the yellow, you see the caregiver, in the orange, the wheelchair user. So I've selected a few skills just to kind of highlight. 12 of 18 caregivers, for example, were having difficulty rolling on soft surfaces. So that's things like grass, snow, sand. Many were having difficulty going up and down ramps, over gaps. And so in contrast to what the clinicians thought in terms of, the parents and the kids will figure it out, they actually weren't. They're having a lot of difficulty. And I think we all know that when a child and or their parent are unable to safely and effectively and efficiently use their manual wheelchair, there can be very negative consequences. So there are safety issues. There's issues with the child not being able to engage in the activities and the tasks that they need and want to do on a day-to-day basis. And so this didn't sit well with us. So we then moved on to actually step 3. We bypassed step 2 for the moment. We moved on to step 3 to really get a better understanding of the barriers to using the wheelchair skills training program at this pediatric center and affiliated schools. We collected a lot of data for this particular phase of our work. I'm sharing very little of it with you here. I'm focusing on the data specific to the intervention, which is the wheelchair skills training program, and specific to four challenges that the clinicians felt were most important. And if they were addressed, that they would then be able to start using the wheelchair skills training program in practice. So the first challenge they identified is that they avoid community and advanced wheelchair skills, testing and training both categories of skills, because they felt like it wasn't safe to train the children. And they felt they were curious as to whether or not there was actual evidence of the use of this program with children. And so in considering the knowledge creation funnel within the knowledge to action framework, we considered that we could tackle this barrier from the inquiry perspective as well as synthesis perspective. And so 2 of our proposed solutions were to conduct a randomized controlled trial to really look at the effectiveness within children. There's tons and tons and tons of data looking at the effectiveness of this program with adults and older adults and different diagnoses, but very little evidence for children. So fair game for the clinicians, fair point, I should say. And then we also want to conduct some systematic and scoping reviews to really gather the evidence that's out there. The second challenge that they were facing was they felt like the wheelchair skills program, the training program, needed to offer a more playful approach to training. And so here again, we were looking at collecting more data, more evidence around using this program in a more playful way, and also developing resources that could be used to incorporate it into practice in a more fun, motivating, engaging way. The third barrier was that the wheelchair skills program manual, as I mentioned, it's 332 pages in its current version, was lacking in pediatric specific details. And so in terms of knowledge creation, this is really at the product level, and our proposed solution was adding more special considerations for children. We have special considerations for caregivers, for example, for different types of diagnoses. And so over the last couple of years in particular, we've been adding special considerations for children. Clinicians also felt that with the manual being so comprehensive, which on one hand is great, but on the other hand, it's very difficult for busy clinicians to quickly access information that they need specific to kids. And so our proposed solution for this was to develop products or resources that were pediatric specific. So we developed a pediatric handbook version of the Wheelchair Skills Program manual, and we're in the process of developing a video series, kind of a train the trainer video series. So as I mentioned, the very first thing that we started to do was adapt this knowledge to the local pediatric context by adapting the manual in terms of adding the special considerations for children components to it. And so if you look at the manual, the version today versus, let's say, a version from 2 or 3 years ago, you will see a lot more information that's specific to pediatrics in the manual. So that's an ongoing process, and we'll continue to do that as we gather information through both research as well as from clinicians. So apart from adapting the knowledge in that way, we really felt like we had to jump back into this knowledge creation funnel. As I described as I was going through, there are barriers, and really tackle knowledge inquiry, synthesis, and the development of tools, products, and resources. When we started the process, considering knowledge inquiry, of the 81 articles that were published demonstrating the effectiveness of the Wheelchair Skills Training Program, only 4 were specific to children. And of the 123 articles that were looking at the measurement properties of either the Wheelchair Skills Test or the questionnaire version, only 1 targeted the pediatric population. From the knowledge synthesis perspective, there had been 1 systematic review conducted specifically on the Wheelchair Skills Training Program, and it did not include any articles involving the pediatric population. In terms of the 3rd generation knowledge or the creation of tools, products, and resources, up to that point, all of the resources developed were primarily oriented towards adults or older adults. So this was our starting point. So to address knowledge inquiry, or to gather more evidence around the effectiveness of the Wheelchair Skills Training Program in pediatrics, we conducted a study on wheelchair dance, so incorporating wheelchair skills training into a wheelchair dance camp, and that's been completed. And then we're currently conducting a randomized control trial looking at the effectiveness of the program in pediatrics. So a little bit more about both of these projects. The wheelchair dance project was conducted in Montreal by a really fun and interesting group of researchers, clinicians, and students. We had dancers, so academics who were also dancers who offered that kind of component, and then we had wheelchair skills experts, and then we had the students, all from 3 different universities and 2 different research centers, all coming together to address the barrier of the need to offer wheelchair skills training in a more fun and engaging way. And so we engaged in a convergent mixed methods study where we offered a 5-day or 30-hour dance camp, a bit of a pilot study, to 3 adolescent manual wheelchair users. You can kind of see our process here in the figure at the bottom of the slide, but what I really want to point out is that we gathered data on their wheelchair skills before the dance camp. And in gathering that data, we worked with the children in order to determine what their goals were from the perspective of wheelchair skills in engaging in the dance camp. And so for each of the children, they chose 2 to 3 wheelchair skills that they wanted to improve over the 5-day dance camp. And from our perspective, we use that information to integrate the skills into the choreography, so into the final product the children and instructors were working towards across the 5 days. So that made it very meaningful for children. So there were the 3 children, and then there were also 3 professional dancers who they worked with in the dance camp, and then there were the wheelchair skills trainers, and we also had choreographers and also people to engage in choosing the music with us. So the children, I think it's really important to point out that the children were engaged in all components of the camp. So they were engaged in developing the choreography, choosing the clothing, choosing the music, and as I already mentioned, choosing the skills. What we found when we measured wheelchair skills post-camp was that the children did improve in their wheelchair skills. We also measured wheelchair confidence. They also improved in that. And we gathered some qualitative data as well, which I think is really important. And just sharing a couple of quotes here with you on this slide, I think it's really important to note that what the children were learning in this fun, novel way in a dance camp, the skills they were learning, they were transferring them to their real day-to-day life. So I think that's the ultimate goal, and that was happening in this dance camp, which was great. And they also spoke a lot about the sense of belonging and inclusion they felt in being engaged in this inclusive dance camp. So that was one of the ways in which we wanted to gather evidence on, is there a different way to do wheelchair skills training that is much more fun and engaging than a basic wheelchair skills training session that we would typically offer in rehabilitation. There is a video of the final choreographed performance from the dance camp. If we have time at the end, we can come back to this slide and show the video, but if not, the link is here. Please feel free to click on the link at some point if you're interested in watching this video. It's really heartwarming to see the children be able to perform those skills in the choreographed performance that were their goals in engaging in this dance camp. The next project specific to knowledge inquiry is the randomized control trial looking at the effectiveness of the wheelchair skills training program in pediatrics. It's a 3-site project. The sites are Halifax, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Montreal in Quebec, Quebec City and Montreal in the province of Quebec, I should say. And you can see the team members on the screen here. So lots of researchers and graduate students from different universities and programs and research centers across Canada. The primary objective is to test the hypothesis that children and adolescents who receive the wheelchair skills training program will have higher manual wheelchair skills capacity compared to the children and adolescents in the control group who receive usual care. You can see to the right-hand side of this screen our process. We are collecting data from 20 pediatric manual wheelchair users at each site, so a total of 60. The project is still ongoing. We finished data collection at 1 site and are almost done at the remaining 2 sites, and so we'll have to stay tuned for the results of this project, but preliminarily it's looking very positive in terms of the impact of the wheelchair skills training for the children and their families. And we have both the quantitative data from the randomized control trial as well as qualitative data that we're collecting for the study. So moving on to knowledge synthesis, so the gathering of the information and the data that's out there. We're currently conducting a systematic review on the measurement properties of wheeled mobility use outcomes. We published the protocol paper and we are working on the review at the moment. And then secondly, we are conducting a scoping review that's looking at the intervention characteristics of the wheelchair skills training program across populations and settings. So really looking, kind of digging a bit deeper in terms of how this intervention is being offered across populations and settings, and seeing what's working really well and maybe what's working less well. And we're using the tidier framework to do that. In terms of the 3rd generation knowledge creation, we've been developing tools and resources that can be used to implement the wheelchair skills training program in pediatric settings. So we've developed what we call We Wheel tools, and we have 2 publications on that, which is what you can see here. We've also developed a pediatric handbook and are in the process of developing a Train the Trainer video series. So the We Wheel tools are meant to again, address the barrier of the wheelchair skills training program needing to be offered in a more playful way. So we've developed tools that can be incorporated into training in order to make it more fun, engaging, and motivating for the kids. Again, a large team of students, researchers, wheelchair users, patient partners, all coming together to work on these resources. It started with a very small grant from Child Bright, and a group of very interested grad students and researchers are continuing this work. So we've essentially develop the resources and then go through an iterative design whereby we obtain feedback qualitatively from the end users, so being the pediatric manual wheelchair users as well as clinicians. The resources that I'm about to show you are available currently in English, French, and Spanish, and soon they'll be available in Italian. And of course, they're all on the Wheelchair Skills Program website. So what are the WeWheel tools? They are 3 complementary pediatric-specific resources, which include storybooks, instructional posters, and training workbooks. There are 3 sets of tools to date, and they're designed to be used successively because they cover 13 so far of the 30 manual wheelchair skills included in the Wheelchair Skills Program. Our goal is to have resources that cover all 30 skills, and so we're continuing to work on developing additional sets of these resources. They incorporate aspects of motor learning principles, as well as social cognitive theory. They're culturally and gender inclusive, and of course, child and youth friendly. And each of these resources targets a specific component of the training process. For example, these storybooks are intended to create awareness for pediatric manual wheelchair users, for their families and friends, for their healthcare team, education team, that when a child needs to use a manual wheelchair for mobility, if taught the wheelchair skills that they need in order to engage in the things that they need and want to do on a day-to-day basis, that they can still do those things. So it's really meant to create awareness that life still goes on, life is still okay, even though a child has to use a manual wheelchair for mobility. The instructional posters are designed to aid in the training process. The instructional posters break skills down into smaller steps. They provide key phrases, they provide visual cues, and these posters can be used in training sessions, and they can also be posted in the environments in which the children frequent. So for example, at schools, rehabilitation centers, community centers, even in the child's home. And the training workbooks are used to facilitate the training process. So they're to be used by the clinicians, in conjunction with the child, maybe other members of the healthcare team, and family. And so I'll take you through and give you some examples of each of these resources. So in the first set of resources, we meet Gab, pediatric manual wheelchair user, and Gab's dog Poppy, and they are out for a stroll in the forest, and they notice a castle off in the distance. And so in order to get to that castle, Gab needs to perform 4 wheelchair skills: roll forward, rolls backwards, turns while moving forward, and reaches objects. And so related to the storybook, which I'll show you in a moment, are 4 instructional posters, 1 for each skill. The instructional posters incorporate aspects of the storybook into the poster. So here you can see the apple that's also in the trees. Pardon me. It breaks the skill down into smaller steps and provides visual cues. In this case, an arrow down here, or a rainbow with a sun and a cloud at either end. And then there's also an associated training workbook. So for this set of resources, I'm going to show you an example of a couple of pages of the storybook. So here's the cover. And the way it works is that on one side of the book, it tells the story. So here they're saying that they see this huge castle and they're going to have to push to get there. And then on the other page, they describe how to do the skill. In this case, rolling forward. And again, incorporating aspects of the story into how to do the skill, in this case, the apple and arrows. As the story progresses, they see a ball and Gab wants to pick up the ball for the dog in order to be able to throw it. And so on the next page, it demonstrates how a pediatric manual wheelchair user would pick up the ball. And the story goes on until we get to the point where Gab and Poppy reach the castle. And just outside of the castle, Gab meets Sam, who actually lives in the castle. And so the next set of storybooks describes Sam showing Gab and Poppy around the castle. And so in order to get around the inside of the castle, they have to be able to open and close doors, go up and down ramps, maneuver sideways, and turn in place. And so for this set of resources, I'll show you a couple of the posters that are associated with the storybook. So again, here you can see that going up in the ramp is broken down into kind of 3 steps with short phrases describing how to do the skill and also visual cues that the trainer can then use during training. They might say, okay, look at the poster. Remember, you're going to go from, the rocket and push just as far as the star. So short pushes to get up the ramp. Another example of an instructional poster is going down a ramp. So same thing, this has an added visual feature with a magnifying glass, bringing attention to one specific aspect of the skill. So in this case, going down the ramp, you'll hold the hand rims lightly with a light grip. And then at the bottom of the ramp, you will hold the hand rims a little bit tighter in order to stop. So again, just a visual cue for the kids to understand what to do at each step and for the trainer to be able to bring their attention to and to use while training. The third set of resources portrays a character who has just received tickets to go to an outdoor concert. And at this concert, the child needs to roll on soft surfaces, get over an obstacle, and go up and down steep inclines. And so for this set of resources, I'm going to give you an example or show you an example of the training workbook. So we've got the title page, we've got a page for the child to identify challenges and set SMART goals, then kind of the instructions in terms of how the training workbook works in terms of success levels and assistance levels, and then a page for each of the skills broken down into the steps that the child would already have seen in the storybooks and on the posters by session. Their success score would be written kind of at the top here of each of the different steps of the skill, and then the clinician could circle the assistance that's required, if any. So those were the WeWheel tools, again, all available on the Wheelchair Skills Program website. Then we developed the pediatric handbook. So that was in reference to the barrier that it's difficult to access quickly and easily pediatric specific information from the very comprehensive Wheelchair Skills Program manual. And so the Wheelchair Skills Program Pediatric Subcommittee has undergone this work and really led by Beatrice Ouellette, who's a PhD candidate at the Université Laval. We created the handbook using a nominal group technique and then getting feedback via focus group from the end users as well as a few other groups of interested individuals. So it's a very condensed version of the manual, so it's 47 pages versus 332. The sections really focus on safety, motor learning principles, skills training, games, and a toolbox that you may want to have on hand if you regularly do wheelchair skills training with kids. It incorporates pediatric specific information, examples that are pediatric specific, and photos that are pediatric specific. And it links, it's obviously a very condensed version, so it links to the associated content in the Wheelchair Skills Program manual, as well as any other resources that are available, such as the WeWheel resources. The manual is available in English, French, and Spanish, and soon Italian. It is on the website, and we're undergoing gathering some more feedback on it and integrating that into the handbook. So if you notice that it's not there one day, it's simply because we've made changes and we're updating a new version. There's the link. So just a couple of pages out of this manual. This is just the front page of it. So you can see it's more colorful. It's got pictures of kids. It's not just kind of a black and white manual. So it's definitely more pediatric friendly. Similar to the other resources, the We Will resources, it breaks the skills down into steps with short phrases in order to indicate how to perform or what the technique is for each of the steps. Gives description, relevance, safety, progression, and helpful hints, most of which are pediatric specific. It also has a section on games and several other sections, like I mentioned earlier, the toolbox that you might want to put together. So that was just a few pages of the pediatric handbook. Another project that we're currently working on is developing the pediatric specific video series. It's very much under development. We're partway through this process, and it's really to address the barrier, coming back to the barrier that clinicians aren't training community in advanced wheelchair skills. Through the randomized controlled trial and the wheelchair dance projects, we're gathering even more evidence on the effectiveness of this program with kids, but clinicians are still afraid to do wheelchair skills testing and training specifically for community and advanced skills. And so in order to help overcome this barrier, we're developing these tailored instructional videos that will then become a video series or an online module. We are working with patient partners. You can see them both in the pictures on this screen. They're being developed by a PhD student and an occupational therapist. They're both occupational therapists in Montreal at the Pediatric Rehab Center. And we're really focusing on safety and how to test and train the skills. Right now, the videos we have are available in French. We'll be translating them to English soon. And so the videos I'm going to show you right now are in French. So I think I'll turn the sound off and talk you through the information that they're actually giving you on the video.
Position de départ du parent.
So to begin the video, there's some audio narrative on how to keep the child safe and to appropriately spot the wheelchair skill. So in this case, the skill that they're doing is going up a big level change or a curb. And so they're describing exactly as the spotter how you want to spot the skill, because it's a difficult skill to spot, especially if the wheelchair doesn't have push handles. And so here they're just simply showing that you would use the rigidizer bar as opposed, well, if the push handles were not available. It describes, visually shows the distance that the child can start in terms of the instructions. It provides the instructions and then shows the child doing the wheelchair skill and the spotter spotting. So we show it in real time and then we slow down the video so that the user of the video can catch all of the details. And then we go through and we describe what the score would be using the scoring criteria for this particular child with this particular skill. So in this case, we are going through the general criteria for this skill. So did all 4 wheels make it to the top of the curb? Yes. Did he stay upright in the chair? Yes. Did he need to lift up the anti-tippers? Yes. And they're also describing that the child has an advanced score because there's nothing that we could do to improve how the child is doing the skill. He's at an advanced level. Just to give you one more example.
Position de départ du parent.
So this skill is going down a steep ramp. And so again, it's the same format. So describing how the trainer or the clinician would spot the child doing this skill, what the risks of tipping, for example, are, the instructions for how to do the skill. And then once the child does do the skill, similar to the last video, we show it in real time, and then we show it more slowly and describe what the child's score would be for this particular skill based on the general and specific scoring criteria. So in the interest of time, I'll stop the video there and keep going. It may seem very basic. It is very basic, but it's one of, it's a big barrier for clinicians in terms of using the wheelchair skills test, saying, I don't know all of the exact instructions to give the child. I'm not sure what the tipping risks are, where to be when I'm spotting, I don't feel safe. And then also, how do I score it with the general and the specific scoring criteria for each skill in the wheelchair skills program. And so this just breaks it down. If a clinician wanted to quickly score or test or train a skill, they could pull up one of these videos to help. Okay, so now we've gone through a process of, we were in the knowledge creation funnel. We've done some work in knowledge inquiry and knowledge synthesis and developing products that could be used. And so we're popping back out into the fourth step of the knowledge to action process. At the Pediatric Rehabilitation Center and the affiliated schools, they're now running a group called 321 Let's Roll. And they're using all of the tools that I've just described for you to run these groups. So for example, these pictures are from a school. And you can see they've put the posters on the wall. They've used pool noodles just to kind of provide the boundaries for going around a corner. They printed out a large version of the tree from the first story, kind of making the castle. You can't really see it in this picture, but they've got a dog. They've got like the logs that were, along the path to the castle. So essentially they create the environment from the storybook to engage the kids in the wheelchair skills training. They start the training sessions after they've gone through the process of looking at goals and kind of coming back to where the kids are at with their goals. They read a portion, either the whole story or a portion of the story to begin the training session. And then they train the wheelchair skills, and they try to incorporate from the storybook and from the resources the different things that the children have seen in the books and the posters and the training workbooks. So for example, here you can see the apple on the axle of the wheelchair here. And so they've started running this group. They've ran it a number of times. They are capturing data using the wheelchair skills test on its effectiveness. And this video that's upcoming is in French, but I'm going to let it play through in French so that you can hear, I guess, the enthusiasm and the responses from the kids. It's a really short video. So she's saying, what do we do with our hands? Do we hold the hand rims tightly? She's saying, what do we do? And the kids are providing responses. And the next thing you're going to hear is one of the other clinicians pointing them towards the instructional poster in order to asking what Sam is doing in the photo. So they're showing this magnified component of the poster saying, you need to let the hand rims go lightly through your hands, and this is what you're going to hear. Shh. So they're providing them visual information, auditory information for the kids to really understand what it is they're supposed to do in order to learn how to go down a ramp. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the presentation. So just by way of a quick summary of what I've shared today, I've described for you really briefly the Wheelchair Skills Program, described that we've been working for a number of years, I would say about 10 years, on integrating or implementing this program into pediatric rehabilitation settings and affiliated schools, and that we've gone through the knowledge creation funnel here in the center to generate knowledge on novel, more fun ways to conduct wheelchair skills training. And our example was through wheelchair dance, that we're collecting information on or data on the effectiveness of the wheelchair skills training program in pediatrics using the randomized control trial. For synthesis, we are conducting a scoping and a systematic review. The protocols of both have been published, and we're currently working on finalizing those reviews, so hopefully they will be out soon. And we've created, I think most importantly, or equally importantly, we've created a number of tools that can be used to implement pediatric wheelchair skills training. So the We Will resources, the pediatric handbook, and the video series. When it comes to knowledge translation, I think this statistic is still accurate. They say 14% of research is translated into practice, and it takes an average of 17 years. So it's a long time to get the evidence, the data that we collect into practice. And as I keep saying, we've been working on this for about 10 years, and this is where we're at right now. We still have work to do for sure, but I'd like to share this information on the resources that are becoming available as often as I can, so that others out there can use them. And please feel free, if you do use these resources or you are reading any of the literature surrounding our work, please feel free to give feedback, offer suggestions. If you're actively engaging in pediatric manual wheelchair skills training, we'd love to hear from you if you have suggestions to offer of things that we can include or different avenues to take. So I'm hopeful that you have developed over the course of the last 50 minutes a better understanding of the evolution of the wheelchair skills program, in particular with respect to its application in pediatric rehabilitation, that you're now able to list 3 ingredients that are important to include in pediatric wheelchair skills training, and that you can describe 2 approaches or resources that you could use either in your practice or research for delivering or engaging in research related to pediatric wheelchair skills training. And there's references at the end if you're looking for any of the articles that I've referred to throughout the presentation. And that's it. Jessica, will we go with a few questions now?
Yes, we can go on. If you can bring yourself up and you don't have to share your screen anymore, that would be great. Thank you. That was very exciting. When I saw it in Ireland, I was just as happy as I am now. It's beautiful, it's fun, very colorful, and I see a lot of potential for use. And I'm hoping that we do start incorporating a little bit more wheelchair skills programs with both adults and peds throughout North America and the world. We do have opportunity for questions. If anybody wants to type those in, there haven't been any, but we do have some time. So if you have any questions, in the meantime, I will collate everybody's name and email that attended, and we'll send you an email on how to get continuing education units if you're interested in getting those. And I'll give you all that information today or early tomorrow. I'm still waiting for some of the information from our continuing education coordinator. And lastly, in February, we're going to have another webinar, and it's also going to be done by an occupational therapist. Her name is Patricia Toole, and she is going to focus on play while standing, and her topic is Stand Up for Play, engineering play opportunities that give meaning to standing. And so that should be fun. All of us have been in situations where we want to get somebody in a stander, and this is going to give us an opportunity to see activities that have been very successful for her in her work. And so we'll show that. And there are not any questions. Paula, is there anything else you'd like to add to summarize up your talk today?
I don't think so. Well, we did have the, are people going to have access to, well, they can watch the webinar afterwards, right?
Yes, and we can send them handout if that's okay with you. We have not, we don't have the PowerPoint, but we can send information on the website and the references if that's okay with you. I can get that from you.
And yes, whatever you would like. I was just thinking the video from the wheelchair dance camp, but I think it's probably, people can click on that and watch that maybe on their own time, but it is worthwhile. It's
okay.
Really
you can show that now if you want. I'll get off and you can show it. We've got a few minutes.
Really?
Yep, we do.
Let me see here. I think it's going to pop out of my PowerPoint and go to Vimeo. Let's just see if it works.
Okay, I'm going to get off so that I'm not sitting on your screen.
Okay. Oops. Webcam. I'm not sure it's going to let me share my screen again.
You were sharing your screen.
Oh, am
Yeah.
I?
Not now, but you just were, and then you took it. Now you are. You're sharing your screen.
Okay, great. So we're going to come back to here.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, great. Let's just see. Oh, actually, if I do this, you're seeing this, right?
Yes.
Are you seeing the video?
Yes.
Okay. There we go.
Thanks for sharing, Paula. That was great. And thank you all for attending. It's very exciting to have you be part of our Sunrise Education in Motion program. And like I said, I will send everything to you in regards to getting your CEU. Thank you very much. And we'll be sending information about our next webinar as well. Paula, thanks a ton. I love your program and I look forward to learning more as you share more of your research.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks everyone for coming. Bye.
Thank you.